Lori from Sunshine Sunflower Studio, and I want to just wish everybody a happy Memorial Day weekend. Everybody's back today to work and doing things in the studio, so I have a featured project this week that I wanted to share with you. If you don't feel comfortable coming into the studio to create, that's okay. I do offer clay to-go kits, so you can get a curbside pickup and create at home. So this is our featured project this week, is called our blooming plant stakes. If you're like me and every plant that comes home with you dies, these might be the way to salvage your garden and give it some color. So we're going to make blooming plant stakes this week using clay. And I'm going to kind of show you how we would do it in the studio, and then if you take a clay to go kit home, there's slight differences, so I'll explain as we're going. So I rolled out my slab using the slab roller that we have here in the studio. If you are creating at home, I'm going to send with you one of these PVC rollers, nice and light and portable and unbreakable, to roll out your slab. So you would use this and flatten out your piece of clay. And I usually tell people that you want it to be about the thickness of your pinky. I call it the pinky test for my small friends at school. But if you can get it to be about the thickness of your pinky, that's kind of what you want. If it's thinner, it becomes very breakable, so you have to kind of be careful with that. So once you get your slab rolled out, if there's any imperfections in your slab that you don't like, we always say our fingers are magic eraser, and we can use it to just wipe away any imperfections or any bubbles or anything that you don't want to see. And then we have templates. This was a very generic template. If you look at the back of my blooming plant stake, that's the kind of shape I have. And so if you didn't want to add a flower, you can just write something on there, but if you want to add a flower, you can. So you're going to place the template on top of your piece of slab clay. If you're creating at home, I'm going to send these little wooden sticks that don't have to come back. They're like bamboo skewers. And you're going to use this to cut out the back of your plant stake. If you're in the studio, I'm going to give you one of these. These are needle tools, and obviously they're a little bit sharper than the blooming plant stake, so they work a little bit better. And then you're going to just cut out around your template for your plant stake using your sharp tool. And then you're going to leave a little bit of extra clay because we're going to use one of our cookie cutters to create the flower part. So this clay I'm going to remove because I don't need this anymore. So I'm just going to set this aside. And then I have my plant stake here. And then obviously I'm going to make a sunflower because what else would I make? But I have butterflies and I have, I don't know, maybe it's a carnation, tulips, daisies, I don't know. All different kinds of flowers for you to pick from. You can kind of let me know, or I can send a couple with you, depending what I have in the studio. And you're just going to use your cookie cutter shape, or you can create your own with your own template and cut it out. And then, just like making a cookie, you're going to just cut it right out. Now what's fun about these two is I like to add a little pizzazz to most of the stuff that I work on, so I'm going to add some glass to mine, and I'll show you how to do that as well. If we're in the studio, we have slightly more options because I have my glass nippers and we can cut for bigger sheets of glass, but if you're at home, what I'll do is I'll send some of these little gems for you that you can just use instead. So what we have now is our plant stake, and we have our flower. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that I get my plant stake all nice and smoothed out, and we're going to get ready to attach our flower to our plant stake. But first I'm going to add my beautiful gems and things. If you want to stamp anything on your plant stake, I will include little pastel letters for friends that are going home. If you're creating in studio, I have letter stamps that you can use. And what's kind of funny, everybody laughs at me about my pastel letters, but the pastel letters will actually burn out in the kiln when I fire it, so it works like a stamp. And some of our other to-go kits have different pasta shapes that we include that you can use to add texture to your project. So best practice to make sure that our plant stake is the way we want it is we want to make sure that we're smoothing out all the edges, because while the clay is nice and soft, while we're working with it, once it gets fired and it's hardened, these little tiny edges around it will be very sharp, and we don't want anybody to get hurt. So we're going to kind of smooth these out. I like to use a sponge. If you're at home, like I said, you can use your finger as your magic eraser to get rid of any of these little sharp edges and just make sure the edges are all nice and smooth. A little spot here that doesn't want to be cooperative. There. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing for my sunflower. Just give him a little wipe to make sure there's no sharp edges on him either, or her, or it. Okay. To cut out the center of my flower where I want to add my glass, I'm going to use this little cup. You can use any little circle shape you want. I typically use wine corks, but since I'm at the studio, I don't have any with me. If you need wine corks, I'm your girl. I can hook you right up. All right. I'm just using my sharp tool, my needle tool, to trace around where I want the center of my sunflower to go. And then this is called a loop tool or a ribbon tool. It's used for carving, but it's also used a lot with wheel throwing. We're going to use it to scoop out the center of our flower. So you can see I made my circle shape here where I know I want to cut it out, and I'm just going to take the rounded part of this and I'm going to kind of just scoop it. I hope you can see it's a little tricky, I know. And you don't want to, you want to go deep enough that the glass will stay in there, but you don't want to be so deep that it goes through, but you don't really want the glass to come out over the edge. And I'll show you what happens if you overfill it and it comes out over the edge. It's not the end of the world, and it actually, you might think it's really beautiful and you might like it that way, which is totally fine, like you're the artist. But I just want to let you know what it would look like. So I've been scooping this out. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to put the glass in there anyway. Maybe about 1/4 of an inch down. So you're basically making like a little well. If you overfill your glass, it'll look something like this. So glaze that we use on here is really kind of glass based in a lot of senses as well, so they kind of fuse together. And so when you're working with glass, if you were only working with glass, you have to be really conscientious about something called the coefficient of expansion, because as glass heats up, if you have 2 different coefficient of expansions, it'll crack and it'll fall apart. But because we're just kind of melting it in there, we don't have to be as fancy or as specific or as scientific with it. The whole purpose is just to give it a little personality and make it kind of pretty. So before I attach my sunflower to my garden stake, I'm gonna, oops, here we go. I'm gonna just kind of lay it out on there and make sure that it's exactly in the position I want it before I start attaching it. So I'm really happy with it looking like this. So now we're gonna do something that I call scratching and attaching. That's the expression I use with my students because it rhymes and it's easy for them to remember. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my needle tool and I'm just going to make a couple little marks on here so I know where I need to do my scratching and attaching. Basically, I'm just outlining a couple little parts of my flower so I know where to put it back once I take it off. So you can see, oops, you can see where I made some little lines there, guidelines if you will. And then for scratching and attaching, you're going to do it on both your flower and your plant stake. So you're just going to take your needle tool, or if you're working at home, your bamboo skewer, and you're just going to make marks. I tell people, think of like hashtags or X's, like there's no specific shapes that you have to use. All we want to do is be disturbing the surface of the clay where we're going to be attaching it, because we're going to add some water and we're going to put it together, and the mixed up pieces and the mixed up clay, it'll work together like glue. If I stick this on here now to the blooming plant stake, it'll stay because all of it's wet. But once the clay starts to dry, it starts to shrink, and as it's shrinking, it shrinks away from each other. So whenever we put two together and we don't attach it properly, this piece is going to fall off. They're not going to stay. So we want to make sure that we scratch and attach. It's really called slipping and scoring, but I like my expression better. So we really want to make sure that we scratch and attach really well. Otherwise our pieces fall apart. Okie dokie. I'm going to dip my finger in some water, and I'm just going to rub it on the areas that I scratched up. And this is going to function kind of like making some glue together. And remember, if you want to add any stamps, you can add some letters, you could add some texture. I've seen where people use it just for like, they don't put a flower on it because they use it for herbs, so you could do something like that too. All right, and I'm just gonna also smooth out the center part where I put where I cut out for my glass. Okie dokie. Looking good. All right. Okay, my plant stake, you can see the water's coming out. That's good, we want it to do that. So I'm gonna take my plant stake that's now all one piece. I'm going to do any stamping that I want to do on here, and then I'm going to add my glass last. What I will include for you is you can paint it first before you add your glass, but for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to do all my painting and everything now. So if you're at home, and if you take this kit home to create, you would get your little choice of gems. You can kind of let me know what colors you want. Being that I'm trying to make a sunflower, mine are going to be more orangey and black. If you're in studio, like I said, we have our glass nippers, and I have little scraps of glass, and then what we would do is we can cut them to fit like a little mosaic, but it's all going to melt together anyway, so it's all good. And then these little pieces would be filled in the middle part when we're ready to fire it after you paint. And then you can put your other pieces around it. So I want my center to be black, and then I want the other pieces to be kind of more of an orangey color. So we'll see how it goes. Sometimes it cooperates, right? And so I would fill those in. So when it's finished and you've stamped and then painted and then added glass last, your finished project would look something like this when it came out of the kiln, ready to go on your front porch in a flower pot or in your garden or your planter box, so that you too can look like an amazing gardener, even if you're really like me. Okay, well, this is our featured project this week. Like I said, if you want to come in, we're open Tuesday through Friday from 11 to 7, and Saturday is also from 11 to 7. I don't know why I split that up. And then Sundays by appointment. And if you would rather do this as a to-go kit, I can put a to-go kit together for you. Our to-go kits are $25. So let me know, and we can get that put together for you. You can email me at sunshinesunflowerceramics@gmail.com, or you can send me a text at 352-601-6084. I'm in the studio today. Or you can stop by. We're at 700 West Campbell Ave in Phoenix. So if you haven't been able to pop into the studio yet, I do hope to see you soon. And thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.